Okay.
Yeah. So today we will be continuing our discussion on the same topic, origin and development of scientific, inquiry. In other words,
Okay, teacher.
scientific, how do you say, development throughout the world. So we have already discussed some part, and as I said, I have sent the document to everyone. So
Okay.
if you have gone through some part of it, or if you remember anything from the last class's discussion, I think you can share. But some of you are submitting me these summaries. That is good, but I did not receive the summaries from everyone. So I'm expecting that those who have not uh, written the summary, spend some time and then try to do it as much as possible. As I said, you do not have to go through the entire document. For example, in the case of this last document that I sent to you, it is quite big, so you just focus on some part of it. When you quickly go through it, you can see that there are, to understand a general development of the scientific inquiry, you can focus on a certain aspect and then you can have some understanding. And of course, we will be discussing in the class. We have already discussed part of it in our last class, right? And if all of you are careful enough, you would see that when there is a discussion of this scientific development throughout the world, based on this particular document, we find that the focus is not, the focus of this scientific revolution or scientific inquiry is not limited to any particular, area or if any particular field of study, right? It includes epistemological aspect, for example, how people becoming curious or inquisitive about the natural phenomena or about their life, whatever has been happening around their life, and gradually they are becoming curious to know, right? And they are coming up with different ideas. Sometimes from modern perspective, if you look at their curiosity and then their behavior, you would see that you can identify some aspects to be a kind of religious aspect or spiritual aspect of it, because they did not have proper answer to some of the questions, right? For example, when they have been facing natural disasters and so on, so they have been coming up with the ideas of a certain external force doing it, right? And then uh, some of the people have been thinking that probably we need to do a certain type of actions to glorify or to satisfy these external forces, so that we can live peacefully, because it is these external forces that are responsible for creating all these natural phenomena. For example, rain or strong wind and so on, right? So they have been coming up with um, external uh, spirits, or you can say that later on, for example, with the idea of different types of gods and so on, right? But we have been also discussing that most of the time people have to depend on their cultivation of foods and so on. So they have to understand how these seasons change, when they can really plant their vegetables or paddies or whatever, right? And when they can cut. So they have to understand the movement of the sun, movement of the moon, and the changes of the nature that is taking place throughout the year, right? So that can be regarded as the beginning of science, in the sense that people are becoming aware of their life, and they are becoming curious and also aware of what is happening in the world. Okay. And then especially when we have been discussing the scientific discoveries in China, we came to know that they are the ones who first came up with kind of a calendar, right? So that is particularly for the purpose of their bureaucratic system, right? And also, for even for the survival of common people, to understand the different seasons and so on. And later on, it is becoming more and more complex, because as we have seen some pictures, Stonehenge and so on, where you find that people are actually, creating some sculpture with a certain purpose. And to create these sculptures, we understand that they have been putting so much of energy, so much of their intelligence, right? So much of effort. And this could be regarded as, representative of early science. Okay, how they are measuring everything, right? If you remember, we have been looking at one of the picture. It is called megalithic structure, Stonehenge, and megalithic structure with a big face, right, made of stone. So, and the modern scientists, for example, are saying that people need to have a certain understanding of Pythagorean numbers or mathematical understanding to create such sculpture. Okay, so this is also what we have been discussing last week. Anyway, so any of you would like to share your understanding of the last week's lecture, or from whatever you have been reading so far? What does Upama has to say? Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Both of you have written good summary, Grace and Upama. Both of your ones are good, I think. In Grace's writing, I see that you have covered so many different aspects very briefly. That is quite okay. I would say that when you touch on a particular, because all this, how do you say, all these points or topics of discussion, not very easy to, discuss or understand in a very simple terms. So sometimes when we take up such topic as, free will, or, the first cause of the origin of the universe, or whatever it is, and this kind of, topics, sometimes we need to spend some time to some space to provide clearer explanation, right? Otherwise everything gets mixed up. But I think your presentation is quite okay. So later on, if you are going to take up this kind of topic, take up a particular topic, spend a paragraph to justify it, and then move on to the another big topic, right? So that within that paragraph, what you want to say becomes a little more clear, rather than mixing up all these big points. Yeah, and because you see, normally what happens is that we have this tendency of finding out answer, clear-cut answer, but we also need to be open for challenges and questions. So not just because in some cases, in most of the cases, sometimes you do not find clear-cut answer for different reasons. What is important is to have a critical mind, and also probably the questions are important. You can have questions, but we all can have questions, but we cannot expect that we are going to get a straightforward answer very quickly. Yeah, so it is not really possible for different reasons. It could be because of our limited understanding. It could be because of uh, uh, you know um, because our consciousness is not really expanded enough, or because we are trying to understand something in a way that should be probably approached or understood from different perspective, you see, from different point of view. So there could be so many different ways of dealing with these things. That is why we have so many different philosophical system, so many different religious system, you see, because people are looking at things from all different perspectives. So what we do in Buddhism is, for example, in early Buddhism or Theravada Buddhism, I would say that because in different Buddhist tradition, again, you have different approaches. In the Theravada Buddhist tradition, the focus is mostly from the dependent origination theory, and from the understanding of middle way or middle position, as it is called. And in the school of Nagarjuna, for example, you'd have everything is approached from the perspective of emptiness. Even the emptiness itself is, understood with the theory of emptiness. And the Yogacara system, you have this idea of alaya vijnana, or three types of reality, right? One is imaginary nature, as everything appears before our senses or sense faculties. And then there is a real nature, which is which appear to be imaginary because of our lack of understanding. And there is the third one, that is called parinishpanna, the clear understanding of everything, which is also again the understanding of this second one, right? So that is how they make the differences between common worldling and noble beings, that there is this reality of nature, which if you do not understand properly, you fall into the category of common being. Once you understand it, you become noble being. So there is this middle position, which is said to be the, you can say, dependent nature of everything, relativity of everything. That is the second one. That is called, first one is called parikalpita. Parikalpita means imaginary nature. Parikalpita. Swabhava. And then second one is called actually dependent nature, but I do not remember the Sanskrit word. And the third is called paranishpanna swabhava, accomplished nature. So that is their approach of dealing with everything. And also they have this idea of alaya vijnana, right? And different levels of consciousness. So according to Yogacara system, for example, it is, it is like consciousness seeing consciousness. So consciousness is interacting, your own consciousness is interacting with your own consciousness. It is always different moments of your consciousness acting as subject and object. That's all. Because nobody knows what is going on external to you. It is all image. It is like when you take a picture, look at the picture in the camera, the external object is there. You are just looking at the picture, how you captured it. So when you look at the certain things, when you hear, when you use your senses, you do not really get what is out there. What you have is a kind of an impression you created with your senses, right? And that is the one that is stuck in your consciousness. And when you say I see this, that means one part of your consciousness looking at another part of your consciousness. One part is acting as subject, the other is acting as object. So the true realization happens when you are free from this dualistic thinking of subject and object, right? So that is how it is presented. In the case of Nagarjuna's teaching, for example, he says that everything is empty in the sense that there is no self nature, because very logically he approached to these topics that if something has got self nature, its own nature, it should not change, right? So changeability, changing nature suggests that nothing has got self nature, own independent existence. And he comes up with the idea that if something has got own independent existence, it should not change. Without change, existence is not possible, right? It should be just a static.
Yeah, that is so philosophical and also sophisticated for me. So, do you think the nature of Buddha is also emptiness? According to this text, this particular text.
So now even this idea of Buddha nature can be understood from different perspectives. For us, Buddha nature is an idea, is a purified consciousness and so on that is present in every living being. So you have to purify your mind. You have to be free from all kinds of defilements or negative forces so that you can realize it. It is like diamond covered with all kinds of mud and everything. Once you purify it, you get the shining diamond, and that is the realization. So that is our understanding of Buddha nature, right? But probably from the perspective of enlightened being, They would say that what I say Buddha nature is none of what you have been thinking, because you are in the samsara and you are always thinking of something in terms of exist, non-exist, pure, impure, right? So once you become free from that, there is something that you'd see. And now even this thing also, you see, when we say that I become enlightened, you become enlightened. So that means when I have this mind and body, I have these five aggregates, I am making an effort to be free from samsara, to realize this truth, Buddha nature or whatever it is. And then once you realize it, you say that I have attained the path. But you have to keep in mind that once you do that, you are still living with mind and body in this life, right? Then the question is, what happens after you are passing away, right? Why I'm saying this is because all our understanding happens within this mind body, right? And in Buddhist teachings, we find that once somebody attains arahanthood or become enlightened, after his passing away, you do not talk about his existence, because as soon as you talk about his existence or rebirth, you are talking in terms of samsaric existence with regard to somebody who has gone beyond samsara. But it does not mean that it doesn't exist. Why? Because again, when you talk of him to be non-existent, you are talking in terms of your existence in samsara. I exist, right? And I'm here now, and after I become enlightened, I'll be nobody, I'll be nothing. It is that kind of thinking that is not true. So what it is cannot be explained in words, but we can have some understanding that it is. That is why it is explained to be, beyond existence and non-existence. So there could be something, there could be nothing. What it is, we do not know. It could be a completely different thing. Probably we cannot really put it in terms of existence or non-existence. That is the problem. Okay, so in that case, what we have to do is that because now there is a problem. For example, if you approach this intellectually, the problem is that then you can easily say that I do not want to get there because I'm not sure if it is really real or not, right? So from my existence right now, I do not really want to try it. I do not want to get there. So you can have that. You can have that understanding. In that case, we have to just rely on the words of these enlightened masters, and we have to have a certain kind of faith. In the beginning, you really need to have a certain type of faith, because when somebody talk about in these terms, right, we are not in a position to really grasp it. Then how are we going to believe them if we become too critical, right? So the only possibility is that, okay, now this is a person who is saying that he has been going through these practices and he has found something and he wants to share it to us. So what I can do right now is that give it a try. Let's see how it goes. That is the only option we have. And of course, if you talk about Theravada system of thought, or I think for that matter any Buddhist school, they would give you, of course, step-by-step teaching. And in the Theravada teaching, for example, very practical, it would say that when you are thinking good, when your mind is good, you feel good. When your mind is not in a good mood, you do not feel good, right? When you help people, you feel good. You do not help people or somebody trouble you, you do not feel good, you feel bad. So this is a beginning step. Why these Buddhist masters are saying this is because you see and you feel the result of your practice right now, if you think in that line. And then you have a certain belief that, oh, I think I can progress because I can identify what is good and bad. Let's step forward. Let's, okay, I'm now practicing Sila. Let's now try to do some meditation, concentrate my mind and see what happens. So gradually you progress. So yes, so in the case of Nagarjuna's teaching, as I have been saying, even though he made use of this theory of emptiness to everything, he also went so far as to say that even the emptiness is, empty. So there is a view that is called emptiness of emptiness. Because otherwise people would be grasping this emptiness. So it is like different ways of saying the same thing. In early Buddhist text, there is a simile of raft as a dhamma, truth, realization. The Buddha says that you follow this truth, follow this path to cross the ocean of samsara. You have a boat, you have a raft, you make use of it to cross the ocean, the river. After crossing it, you leave it there. You do not even hold on to the Dhamma, hold on to the teaching.
So whether this is truth or this is empty or this is empty or empty. So the aim is to indicate the true nature of things, but it's still, especially about the empty of emptiness.
I know, but it will be clearer later on. At this moment, I can give you some simple examples. For example, when you are a child, right? So your parents give you a doll, you are very happy. Your world, the experience of the world is very limited. The doll is your friend. Sometimes, yeah, the little doll, yeah. So doll is your friend. And sometimes when you are little, when you are a kid, you feel that this doll is alive actually. You talk to the doll, right? You always want to play with the doll, right? And that is your reality. When you grow up, it doesn't make any sense to you. If somebody give you a doll, you would say that why doll? What would I do with this doll, right? So the impression that you had when you were a kid, the likeness, the attachment, all these things that you had, the belief, to be the doll, to be alive, to be your friend, this is all gone once you become older, once you realize that this is just made up of something, it doesn't speak, right? So you do not have attachment to the doll anymore, right? So in the same way, whatever we have been thinking and doing in this samsara, which is also explained in terms of maya, illusory world, or sleeping state, or dream, so many different analogies are used, right? Once you go beyond that, once you grow spiritually, we can say, suddenly you feel that, oh my goodness, I have been living a, I have been living in a lie. Everything was a lie, right? And nothing to hold on to. And then you see things from a different perspective. You see everything to be different. Without giving them any names, without giving them any, without having any kind of judgment, no judgment. You do not say black and white. You do not say day and night. You do not say male and female or whatever it is. You go beyond all conceptions, all ideologies. But of course, as long as you have this mind and body, as long as you are in the society, you make use of all these expressions, all these terms. Because you have to do. That is what the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and enlightened beings did. After attaining enlightenment, they made use of these expressions, worldly expressions, to convey the message. Right? So we should not easily give up. We also should not easily believe. Because without understanding, if you just believe, also I think you are not going to very far. You are not going to go very far. Because if you put so much of your faith in the practice or in the teaching, and for some reason, if you are dissatisfied with your practice and so on, you will be shattered, right? You will turn away. And if you do not accept or believe, also if you reject it outright, if you become too much critical, also you do not know what you are going to miss. So that is why do not accept very quickly, do not reject very quickly. Just give it a try. Let's see how it goes. If you are convinced, then take it up. If you are not convinced, then you can reject it. You can choose some other things. So what I see in Upama's writing is that you try to follow the text closely, and then you try to, in a way, summarize what has been discussed. That is also good. So two different approach, slightly different approach, but very good to read your summaries. I'm inspired, and I hope that other students also will be writing their summaries. It is good practice. It is good for you. You try, you read, you make summary, and you submit it to me. It doesn't matter sometimes, probably, if, for example, in the case of this class is okay. With my other class, so many students, so they are also writing the summaries. Sometimes I do not have enough time to go through all the summaries. Yeah, that is why I'm saying that it doesn't matter if I really go through them or not. What you are doing is real thing that you are doing. You are trying, right? And then probably, of course, I try to go through all the summaries before coming to class. Yeah, because so yeah, and even with regard to the essays, final essays, sometimes, of course, I go through all the essays. I do not provide my critical remark to everybody, only those who are interested, only those who would like to know, because there are some who would like to just complete their requirements, that's all.
But I think it's very important for us to improve ourselves.
Of course.
Just whether in writing or the idea of the theory. This is very, for me, I think it's very difficult to receive the reply from teacher.
Yeah. Yes, so I have been giving my feedback. Yeah.
As a teacher, would you feel angry when you find some grammar mistake?
I'm not angry as long as I see people are trying. As long as I see there is effort.
Yes, we know, because sometimes if English is bad and we want to write something, first time maybe we use some machines.
Machine?
The machine for translation, the app.
I see.
Yeah, but this time I having this year I have this time back to you.
Yeah, no, I can do that. No problem. What I'm concerned, of course, now this is BA program. Especially when you go to third year or final year, or even in the MA, especially in the MA program, actually, you will feel a lot of challenges in your presentation and writing, because you need to be very careful with every expression, every sentence and everything. So what I'm concerned is, as I said, if I see you are making effort from your writing, I can understand if you are making effort or not. It doesn't matter you translate or what, right? That is also a kind of effort. But if it is your thinking, your writing, if it is somebody else's writing, you just copy, then there is no use. It is not cheating me, it is cheating yourself, right? So that is why, if you remember, during the gift exchange ceremony, this monk, Lama,
Yeah.
he said something, I liked it. He said that if you are not a good student, if you do not really want to learn, nobody can teach you. Even the Buddha cannot teach you. But if you want to learn, even the teacher is bad, you can learn something from him. At least you learn that I do not want to be a teacher like him. You see? So what he means is that in the class and also in life, you have to have that attitude of improving yourself, learning more, because there is no end to improving. You see, even in my case, when I write something, I check it so many times, and then later on, I even send it to other people to check.
But you know, when you said the first time I saw yours, I couldn't understand.
My essay.
Yeah, wrong essay. You like to write things. And so, yeah, I mean,
My essay? Which
yeah,
essay?
yes. Dynamita. Sorry, I cannot remember the correct name.
You mean the one that I have, I think, published in some journal? Ah, I see. Yeah, so you will get to there gradually. I see that in my class, most of the students become very frank, and then because I give them that space to share everything, unlike in other classes, I feel happy if somebody is trying to understand things well, to write well. It is very important, but then again, in the academic setting, it is in a way just intellectual exercise. But if you notice, in most of my classes, it doesn't matter what is the subject, because in every class we are discussing the teaching of the Buddha, right? It could be early Buddhist ethics, it could be social teachings of the Buddha, it could be history of Buddhism, whatever it is. This subject also, science and Buddhism, basically in every course you have a certain discussion of Buddha's teaching, right? Or the teachings of different masters like Nagarjuna or Vasubandhu, Buddhaghosa, whoever it is. So you would see that my focus is not entirely academic. Of course, since you are in an academic setting, when you write something, you have to be able to write in an academic way. Gradually, you'll be familiar with that. So you have to make presentation, you have to sit for the exam, you have to write essay in a proper format. So these are academic requirements. So you do intellectual exercise, but you would notice that another aspect very often I emphasize is that is the aspect of your feeling. How do you feel Do you feel you are improving? You know, your teaching has to, when you study the teaching, it should move you. It should, you should have the question that, oh, okay, so today we discussed this, but is it really practically possible to improve or practically possible to realize or learn? If it is possible, if not today, maybe later on I can give it a try, or maybe in the future lives. But you at least have this thought of moving forward, right?
I really appreciate for this teacher, we can join with your class. And yes, I think so. Because I think sometimes before whenever I get a book, and in that book I find a sentence I like it very much. That is to say that people study Buddhism. It don't matter how knowledgeable you are, but do you really benefit from Buddhism? Do you really benefit from the Buddhist meditation or Buddhist practice? That is something that you own by yourself.
Yes. So, simply speaking, the question is, am I becoming a better person? Am I improving, in my daily life, right? We all make mistakes as a human being. But yes, so this point also, that day I was listening to a talk, and when this person is explaining this aspect, I was really, how do you say? I thought that, oh my goodness, so this is an interesting point to discuss really. So he's saying that, when we say that we are human beings, normally what we try to say is that as a human being, we are superior to all the other kind of beings, right? Superior beings. So that is the understanding as a human being, right? But then when people make mistake, then they say that I'm just a human being. You see, so I have feelings, I can become angry, I can do this and that. I'm a human being, I can make a mistake. I'm not a god, I'm not a superior being, right?
Some people I think so.
So yeah, so no, this is quite natural. But then the point that he made is that, okay, now you have to know that when all these great people, they are saying that human being is a great being, what is the reason? Because you have all the potentiality to be great. That is why you can become a Buddha, right? You can become a Bodhisattva. You can become an Arahant. An animal probably cannot become a Buddha or Arahant now, right? But as a human being, you have that potentiality. So if you consider to be a superior being, you are a superior being in that sense. And once you have that idea, when you make mistake, you just say that, okay, you realize that I made a mistake, but I have to make effort so that I do not make it again. You do not justify your mistake by saying that I'm a human being, I'm supposed to make mistake. Later on also I'm going to make mistakes, similar mistakes. You do not justify it. That is a great point, you see. So when he was saying this, I was really, I was thinking that he has really a good point. He is making a really good point. This is an interesting thinking that we all should have. Yeah. So I think Upama raised her hand a long time back. Okay. What do you want to say?
I have already asked my question in the chat box.
So that is what you want to say. That you asked a question in the chat box. When Thales recognized that water is the single most important substance which is present in everything, what he means by everything, and one is of his disciple put an argument against his view about said. So water can be considered as fundamental basic substance. What is the opposite of water? If water represent liquidity, or what is the other word? Not exactly liquidity. Opposite of water should be fire, or how do you say? I don't know the philosophical term for these things. Okay. Anyway, so opposite of water is fire. So what his student was saying is that fire cannot be present in water, right? So if fire cannot be present in water, how can water be present in everything? Water cannot be present in fire, but we know that there is fire, right? So that is why he said what his master was saying, that water is the basic factor that is present in everything. It cannot be accepted as a final truth, final statement.
What does everything mean? Everything?
Hmm?
He said water is presenting everything. Everything means what?
Every, everything means everything. Yeah, everything means everything. When his student is saying that water cannot be present in fire because fire is the opposite of water, you can see what it means by everything. He is singling out fire from everything else. So he's saying that water can be present in everything else, but not in fire. Right? So
I want to protect his teacher because maybe his teacher means that water also can contribute the fire because rock magma that's
and so it says that from that time onward, a critical approach to the philosophy, a critical attitude to philosophy started. So this is to represent a critical attitude to philosophy, because these are people, you see, 5th 6th century BC, that is 2000 years back, 2500 or 3000 years back, people have been thinking about these things. You see, they did not go to any school or anything to study this. So there are just a certain number of people who have been thinking about life, how it all came to exist, what is the fundamental factor of existence. You look at the Aganya Sutta, you would find, of course, you do not take Aganya Sutta to be literally accurate and correct probably, but you can look at the message that is conveyed. And as far as I remember, I think you have mentioned this sutta or discussed part of it in several other courses also. This is a very important sutta, that when people have started to live together, they have been having families and everything. They're enjoying their life. They grow foods, they eat, and they engage in entertainments. They are living their life, but in the community, there are some people who do not find, pleasure or happiness in the social living, and they, left to jungles, forest, and they have been wandering and they have been thinking about life. They are considered to be ascetic, samana. And once they have been focusing on these issues, once they get a certain understanding of life and existence, they come out in the locality and then they talk to people that, what you have been doing is this samsaric life and this worldly life is okay, but there is a higher truth. So this is how this truth-seeking movement began. That is the idea that you can find in the Gaya Sutta, how it all began. So in a similar line, when we are discussing about scientific inquiry or scientific development throughout the world, you would find similar things in the West, in the Greece, right?
Yes, and it seems that all these it came with assumptions.
Of course, yeah, assumptions. That is true. Probably a certain amount of even mathematics as well. Very early, I think people have started to use mathematics. But when you talk about philosophy, these are all theories, logical assumptions. You just make use of your brain, your mind, to think critically what it could be. Now, later on, we will be studying the theory of Darwin with regard to the origin and evolution of life. You would find that water is considered as the fundamental factor of life. So that is, I think, very true when Thal is saying water is the fundamental basics. That is in a way very true. What his student is saying is also true, but probably not entirely true. I would say that, because in the Buddhist perspective, we see that these 4 elements, and later on, of course, when we are studying last week, there is a discussion of 4 elements, right? So in Buddhism, there is a discussion of 4 elements: earth, water, fire, air. And I mentioned it, if you remember, it says that each element is present in the other in different proportion. So what it means is that even fire could be present in water. Water could be present in fire. Now, how it is present, we should understand it differently. Probably in terms of some atomic aspect, neutron, whatever it is. Not exactly fire being present in water. Okay.
I think like we have hot water, it's a kind of energy of hot.
Yes. See. So Upama needs to think more. Maybe after removing the hat.
But this hat is beautiful.
Now it is 3 p.m. I think we are supposed to have a break, early break. And let's see if Vidya Devi can join after half an hour. She sent me an email saying that she's going through some difficulties. So I'm not sure. I responded her. If she doesn't feel okay, I think she can skip the class. So yeah. So we stop for a while. Okay, let us now continue with our usual lecture. I will be sharing my computer screen, and then we will be having our discussions. Okay. So can you all see my computer screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so we have been talking about early science, right? And then we discussed a little bit about this Stonehenge and other megalithic structures, and the kind of measurement or mathematics or mathematical calculations that people have followed as early as, few thousand years back to create this. Is said to be representative of early science. We have discussed about this, making of calendar in China, right, for different purpose, as it is mentioned here. As the Chinese bureaucracy developed, an accurate calendar became absolutely necessary to the maintenance of a legitimacy and order. Yeah, so for example, who would be ruling a certain, place, or who would be having a certain post in the government system for how long a period of time, you need to have a calendar to do that, right? So that is also necessary. The result was a system of astronomical observations and records unparalleled elsewhere, thanks to which there are today star catalogs and observations of eclipses and novae that go back for millennia. So it is always observing the movement of sun and moon. Okay, even when you talk about days and nights, for example, if you are talking about weeks, for example, 7 days in a week, why don't you have 10 days in a week? Why do you have 7 days in a week? How do people, come up with this idea of 7 days, in a week? Why not 10 days? Why not 12 days? Right? And people have been giving names to these days. Now, if you look at the movement of moons, you would find that for about 2 weeks, the moon, when you start to see the moonlight, it takes about 2 weeks for the moon to be completely lit, right? And then another 2 weeks to be dark, to disappear. So that is how you have this month system, right? So before it was, you can say that how many moons people will be counting, like how many moons you have stayed in this place, 2 moons, 3 moons, 4 moons. So that is the counting. If you say that 12 moons circle you stayed in a particular place, that would be about probably 6 months. Because you have moons arising and to become a full moon, 2 weeks time, 15 days time. Another 15 days it is disappearing, right? And then after 2 weeks again you have moon is coming up, right? And then day and night is easily understood. When there is sun, when there is sunshine, you call it a day. When no sunshine, you call it a night. But once people are able to understand the different seasons, for example, this is a period when you would have rain, and then you count how many moon period it covers, and then until the next season of rain. And then you come up with how many months you really need to wait for each different season to take place. Nowadays, you do not have to worry so much because you have calendars. Right? So you can easily say that this is January, right? This is a new year. This is the year 2022. But now, so this became very, very easy for us now to think about this. But when these people have been coming up, with the calendar, with the counting of days, months, year, different seasons. So this is considered to be the development of science. Okay, because people are becoming very sensitive and aware of what is happening in their life and around their life. And this is, I think, a fundamental point, even in the spiritual journey also, because we are going to discuss about science and Buddhism, that you want to know something, you make effort to know that, and then you follow a certain procedure. That is called science, because your ideas or your existence is not fixed, right? You are open to everything. You want to inquire. You have questions and you want answers. That is science. So what happens in science, in the general, common understanding of science, is that they follow a certain, procedure. It is the same in the case of physics, in the case of medical science, in the case of whatever science it is. They make use of a certain tools. They go through a certain experiment, right? And then trial after trial, when they come up with a certain result, they call it, then that is called a scientific proof, a proven fact, a conclusion that they reached. You do the same in the spiritual practice. But as we have been saying, it is different, because here you yourself, your mentality, your physicality, your sense experience become the object of your mind. Whereas in the case of a general science, you become the observer. You make use of the tools, and there is something to be observed. That is very useful, because you come up with different tools, and then they are very useful for lives. If people have not discovered electricity, for example, you see, how would people live now, right? So this is the thing that people came up with after so much of experimentation, right? You talk about different vehicles, cars, bus, aeroplane, and nowadays computers, mobile phones. All these are result of scientific discoveries, scientific experimentation. They are very much part and parcel of our life. Without this, these are called technologies. Without these tools, if it is just the theory, it is just some mathematical calculations and some philosophical ideas, that's all. And in a way, especially if you talk about philosophical ideas, that is what is present in Buddhism as well. Some ideas. But how these people came up with these ideas? What do they mean? How are they, useful in our life? Or these are just simply some ideas, to be remained within the book, and we are not supposed to be engaged in these ideas. It is not anything like that. So as long as we, of course, there is this tendency. So as long as we have this idea that, okay, you want to do experimentation with your mind and body, go ahead. But that is your personal experience. That has nothing to do with science, because everybody will have their own understanding of life. Everybody will have their own experiences. So as long as it is personal truth, it has no place in science. But I think that is going a bit too extreme. Why? Because in science, the idea is that something that I can see, you should also be able to see. Something that I can observe, you should also be able to observe. right? And it is not ultimate. Falsifiability, as we have been discussing, is one of the rule of science, that until now it is truth, tomorrow it may be wrong, there may be a new truth, right? But in Buddhism, if you remember, we have discussed it in the words of Lopez, I think, Donald Lopez, who is saying that in the case of Buddha's teaching, what is truth has been discovered by these enlightened beings. That is the truth. That is the ultimate truth. You do not have newer truth. You make effort to realize it. You do not create any other truth, right? That is established truth. You do not change it. So, in a way, as long as inquisitiveness, questions, eagerness to know things, making effort to know things is concerned, you can say that, Buddhism is scientific and science in a way is Buddhistic, right? Why? Because both areas or both approaches, they are just trying to know the truth and what to make use of this truth and reality of existence. And this scientific effort or scientific approaches translated into the creation of technologies, technological tools. That is why it appears to be so powerful. For example, you have the theory of making computers, but nobody knows how to make it. So you just have the theories, and that is not becoming useful, you see. Once somebody can make a computer, he can make use of it, he can do so many things with that, then you say that because of this scientific process, and because of this scientific investigation, because of their dedication and everything, now we have this computer, we can do so much more work with this, and thanks to this scientific effort and so on. You can say the similar thing with theories and teachings in Buddhist text as well. You can say that as long as they are within the text, they are theories. Once you put them into practice, you have a certain realization or understanding. That is your gain, right? So there are some similarities as long as this approach is concerned, making effort, becoming, how do you say, not closed. You are open to everything. That is the attitude of science. That is the attitude of Buddhism. But there is also a huge difference in the sense that the focus is different. The focus of science is to know basically the external things, external to yourself. Whereas in Buddhism, the focus is to know yourself, to understand who you really are, rather than just assuming that I am the observer, or saying that I am the owner of myself. So those are some fundamental, similarities and differences. Somebody who is writing on the on Buddhism and science from a general perspective, I think will be discussing this later on. I think we have discussed this, yeah, when talking about pyramids also, there is a certain type of mathematical calculations, especially they are talking about, how do you say, this, what is the word they used? Yeah, mathematics, astronomy, and what else that they have made use of. And it is interesting because with this pyramid, and they wanted to keep dead people alive Okay, so that was the idea that, to preserve life after that. I'm not sure how much successful they have been in doing this. So we have been talking about Thales and then his student Anaximander. Archimedes. Yeah, so we have, I think, covered this as well. In the medical science, the idea was that people are becoming sick because of their sins or because of some external evil forces. So they have been having this idea that they have to carry out certain practices or rituals and so on, satisfy the external forces so that they can recover from a certain type of sickness. But then this person came up with the idea that it is completely natural that somebody would become sick for different reasons. It could be because of weather, it could be because of food, it could be because of not living well, right? And there is a remedy that can be produced, right? Making use of the natural, things that are available. So he came up with this idea that, okay, you get sick, but it can be, cured. Okay, making use of all these, natural things that are present. So that is how he is considered to be the original thinker in the field of medicine. His name is Hippocrates. So I think it is with his name that even now in the medical science, when somebody becomes a doctor, they need to take Hippocratic oaths or something. Okay. Probably we have not covered this. Let us continue with this. Science in Rome and Christianity. The Romans were deeply impressed by Greek art, literature, and philosophy and science. And after their conquest of Greece, many Greek intellectuals served as household slaves, tutoring noble Roman children. The Romans were a practical people, however, and while they contemplated the Greek intellectual achievement with awe, they also could not help but ask what good it had done the Greeks. Roman common sense was what kept Rome great. Science and philosophy were either ignored or neglected to rather lower status. So while they have been having the education from these people, but in Rome, it is said that in the beginning, probably they have been ignoring these teachings on science and philosophy for some unknown reason. Probably they were arrogant, with their own way of living. The scientific legacy of Greece was condensed and corrupted into Roman encyclopedias whose major function was entertainment rather than enlightenment. Yeah, so this is made clear here in the second passage that they focused more on entertainment rather than exploring their mind. Okay, so therefore they were not interested in the Greek philosophy or Greek science. At its height, Rome incorporated a host of peoples with different customs, languages, and religions within its empire. One religious sect that proved more significant than the rest was Christianity. Jesus and his kingdom were not of this world, but his disciples and their followers were. So this is established in Christianity that all the ascetics and all the people that have been carrying out the message of Jesus, who actually got the teachings from the God because he's considered to be a son of God. So from heavenly something, heavenly superpower, heavenly inside, these people on the planet got the wisdom, and they are the people who have been dwelling in this world and spreading the message. This world could not be ignored, even though concern with worldly things could be dangerous to the soul. So the early Christians approached the worldly wisdom of their time with ambivalence. On the one hand, the rhetoric and the arguments of ancient philosophy were sneers and delusions that might mislead the simple and the unwary. On the other hand, the sophisticated and the educated of the empire could not be converted unless the Christian message was presented in the terms and rhetoric of the philosophical schools. Yeah, so there are people who have been believing and practicing strictly the Christianity on the one hand. On the other side, there is the influence of this Greece, science and philosophy. And as you have noticed, in Rome, people have been focusing on entertainment. Now, there are two aspects here. One is science and philosophy, and the other is entertainment that is representative of arts, actually. Okay, so you have singing, dancing, and everything. So they are happy with that. So they consider it to be, in a way, a simple life. Okay, you just be happy and do whatever you like to do. Whereas the science and philosophy that is developed in Greece represent intellectual side of people, right? And now here you have this religion called Christianity. There are people who have been attracted to Christianity. So these people probably were not very happy with this discussion of science and philosophy from Greece. So that much information you have with regard to science in Rome and Christianity. So this basically says that in this place, when you talk about, for example, religion, especially in Rome, it was Christianity that was prevalent, and there was a kind of how do you say, clash between religion and this Greek science and philosophy. As you can see here, on the other hand, you look at the last sentence. The sophisticated and the educated of the empire could not be converted unless the Christian message was presented in the terms and rhetoric of the philosophical schools. So there are people who are intellectual, and they have been, there are people who have been, majority of the people following the religion, and there are people who have been questioning. So they are following the approach of science and philosophy. So there is a complete, how do you say, clash between two different approaches. One is scientific and philosophical approach. The other is common people. Now let's talk about science in Islam. Most of the scientific, discoveries and texts later on have been actually translated into this Islamic language called Arabic language, and it really, preserved all these text and discoveries. So they really have contributed a lot in the preservation of all this knowledge with regard to science. So this is in the 7th century. The Arabs, inspired by their new religion, burst out of the Arabian Peninsula and laid the foundations of an Islamic empire that eventually rivaled that of ancient Rome. So you see how they reached up to Rome. To the Arabs, ancient science was a precious treasure. So they took this science as a precious treasure. So they have cherished it very much. The Quran, the sacred book of Islam, particularly praised medicine as an art close to God. So it seems that in the Quran, there is a strong, support for medical science, medicine. Astronomy and astrology were believed to be one way of glimpsing what God willed for humankind. So they have connected or presented astronomy and astrology as something that God willed for humankind. Okay, so I think if you say in this way, it is like because when you talk about astronomy and astrology, what does it mean? You look at the stars, movement, and everything. Earlier we discussed that some of the philosophers and theorists, they're saying that by looking at the movement of stars and so on, you have the idea that actually everything is just connected. Everything is connected. You are not separated from the universe. So you are part of the universe, and the universe is part of you, right? So that is how things are presented. And here you see similar presentation, that when they are saying that when you talk about astronomy or astrology, it is the God who willed for humankind. Contact with Hindu mathematics and the requirements of astronomy stimulated the study of numbers and of geometry. The writings of the Hellenists were therefore eagerly sought and translated, and thus much of the science of antiquity passed into Islamic culture. Greek medicine, Greek astronomy and astrology, Greek mathematics, together with the great philosophical works of Plato and particularly Aristotle, were assimilated in Islam by the end of the 9th century. So 200 years, 7th century to 9th century. Within these 200 years, when Islamic invasion took place in different parts of the world, especially Rome, they took out all these knowledges into their culture, into their language, and they preserved it. So therefore, as I was saying, that they have really contributed a lot in the preservation and transmission of all these knowledges. Medieval European science. The medieval world was caricatured by thinkers of the 18th century Enlightenment as a period of darkness, superstition, and hostility to science and learning. On the contrary, it was one of the great technological vitality. The advances that were made may appear today as trifling, but that is because they were so fundamental. They included the horseshoe and the horse collar, without which horsepower cannot be efficiently exploited. The invention of the crank, the brace and bit, the wheelbarrow, and the flying buttress made possible the great Gothic cathedrals. Improvements in the gear trains of water wheels and the development of windmills harnessed these sources of power with great efficiency. Mechanical ingenuity, building on experience with mills and power wheels, culminated in the 14th century in the mechanical clock, which not only set a new standard of chronometrical accuracy, but also provided philosophers with a new metaphor of, for nature itself. So now there is a discussion about medieval European science here. So when you talk about medieval period, it is basically, in the 15th, 16th, 17th century, of course, before 18th century, definitely. So in this period, what happened is that there's a new revolution that took place. You see that as it is mentioned here, 18th century thinkers say that in the 18th century, it was a period of enlightenment as opposed to coming out of this darkness, superstitious belief, and so on. In the medieval period, a lot of violence occurred in different countries, different parts of the world. Okay, so a lot of wars going on, okay, between different regions. Here you would find the discussion of horsepower, you know, how do you say? Because people have been using these horses, so they have to know how to make better use of the horses. So they have, you know, created this horse collar, you see, so that, you know, they can run faster, right? They can make use of, people can make use of these horses well in their you know, journey, traveling, or in their war and so on. So these are considered to be development in science. And later on there is a discussion of water wheels, development of windmills. So normally you need these water wheels or windmills to you need this for irrigation purpose also. You need to you know, yeah, make use of the water from a certain place. You need to, you know, what do you say, bring it to the place where you do irrigation and so on. So people are coming up with these water wheels and windmills. And at the end, you see that culminated in the 14th century in the mechanical clock. I'm not sure about this. What does it mean by this mechanical clock? So I need to check it again.
No need to use the battery.
Maybe. Let me check. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So I found something called mechanical clock. Let me share the screen again. Can you see this picture here?
Yes.
So if you look at the picture here, it says, yeah, the period mentioned is 1364, right? And there is one that is said to be 1673. So I think this is representative of a mechanical clock in 1364. So it seems like, yeah, this is a clock to tell you the time probably, but it is a big clock. It's not a small clock. Big wheels.
It also have small one.
What?
I've seen this in China.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay, now. So here there is a paper on origin and evolution of the anchor clock. It's called anchor clock. So you see here how people are coming up with this idea of clock, and how complex it was to make this.
Like a toy. It's a bit of like a toy. We just have to turn that gear and the clock will move. And maybe one day or 2 days you have to continue to turn that gear.
I
Like
see.
the clock will stop.
Stop. I see. Interesting. Yes. Hmm. Okay, and then so that is in the medieval European, science. Science was viewed chiefly as a means of understanding God's creation and thereby the Godhead itself. The best example of this attitude is found in the medieval study of optics. Light, as Genesis makes clear, was among the first creations of God. The 12th, 13th century cleric scholar Robert Cross, Grosseteste, how do you read this? Grosseteste, saw in light the first creative impulse. As light spread, it created both space and matter, and in its reflection from the outermost circle of the cosmos, it gradually solidified into the heavenly spheres. To understand the laws of the propagation of light was to understand in some slight way, the nature of the creation. So now here you see that earlier we have been talking about Christianity. Now here you see there is a scholar, Robert Grosseteste, yeah, cleric scholar. So he was a religious person, right? And he was also a scholar. So that is in 12th, 13th century. And he's talking about science in terms of, understanding God's creation. So science, as it is said, was viewed chiefly as a means of understanding God's creation. So in a way, I think he's saying is also right, that because when you believe in the existence of God and God as a creator, so as human beings, when you try to do the inquiry, you are trying to understand the creation of God, right? So I think that is his idea. But here, specific mention is made of light. And I think this is also, very clear, because when you talk about God, you talk about light. God is representative of light. Or light is representative of God. So God represents light, and and light is representative of God. That means that, as it is explained here, in light, the first creative impulse. He saw in light the first creative impulse. This is actually, you can understand it, I think, from different perspective. For example, in the darkness, if you open your eyes also, you do not see, right? You just see darkness. You need light to see things. So as light spread, it created both space and matter. So from God, light came out. From light, space and matter were created in its reflection from the outermost circle of the cosmos. Yeah, so in the and subsequently, the outermost circle of the cosmos was created. It gradually solidified into the heavenly spheres. So heavens were created. To understand the laws of the propagation of light was to understand in some slight way the nature of the creation. So the focus was the light. What is light? And then if you are able to understand the light, you understand the nature of creation. So that is the idea that is provided by this cleric scholar, Robert. His name is very difficult to pronounce. Who can pronounce it correctly? Robert? I don't know how to read it. Grosseteste. In the course of studying light, particular problems were isolated and attacked. What, for example, is the rainbow? It is impossible to get close enough to a rainbow to see clearly what is going on. For as the observer moves, so too does the rainbow. It does seem to depend upon the presence of raindrops. So medieval investigators sought to bring the rainbow down from the skies into their studies. So people saw rainbow, they tried to understand the lights in the rainbow, but they were not able to do that. Then they came up with the idea that let us create rainbow here and then study it. Insight into the nature of the rainbow could be achieved could be achieved by stimulating the conditions under which rainbows occur. That means you create necessary conditions for rainbow to occur. Medieval philosophers examined all aspects of motion with great care, for the nature of motion had important theological implications. Thomas Aquinas used Aristotle's dictum that everything that moves is moved by something else, to show that God must exist, for otherwise the existence of any motion would imply an infinite regression of prior causal motions. The existence of any motion would imply an infinite regression of prior causal motions. You talk about causality, how something is moved, or how something came to exist because of this, and how that thing came to exist because of that, and how that thing came to exist because of that. It is an unending process. Okay, it is an unending process. Yeah. So if you believe in the existence of God, and then you do not ask who created God, then everything is solved. Everything is created by God, but nobody has the power to create the God. God himself created himself, probably. This is interesting. There is a chapter in Nagarjuna's text on motion also, movement. Nagarjuna's book, Examination of Movement. There is a chapter in the Mula Madhyamika Karika. So I'm now, inspired to read that again by looking at this passage to understand what he means. This is interesting. So two things here. One is the discussion of light and then rainbow, and the other is understanding motion, aspects of motion, movement, how things move, anything and everything. What causes movement? If something causes movement, what causes that cause? Yeah, even if you say wind also, and who caused wind to move, to create the movement? So like that, you go Infinite regression. Regression means you go beyond the regression of prior causal motions. It is like saying, how did it all begin? It should be clear that there was no conscious conflict between science and religion in the Middle Ages. As Aquinas pointed out, God was the author of both the book of scripture and the book of nature. So the book of scripture shows knowledge and wisdom and explanation. The book of nature represents how things are, right? In nature. And according to this Aquinas, God is the author of both.
Yes, it's understandable if that God is not personified. It's okay.
Yeah.
Because we have no reason for some accident.
The guide to nature was reason, the faculty that was the image of God in which humankind was made.
This idea from the Bible.
Scripture was direct revelation. That is also accepted, idea in Christianity. The scripture was direct revelation, although it needed interpretation, for there were passages that were obscure or difficult. The two books having the same author could not contradict each other. For the short term, science and revolution merged hand in hand. Aquinas carefully wove knowledge of nature into his theology, as in his proof from motion of the existence of God. But if his scientific concepts of motion should ever be challenged, there would necessarily be a theological challenge as well. By working science into the very fabric of his theology, he virtually guaranteed that someday there would be conflict. Theologians would side with theology and scientists with science to create a bridge that neither particularly desired. So the purpose behind this person, Aquinas, for bringing science and religious explanation together to say that God is the author of both, is to maintain a kind of peaceful environment among the people. But he's also assuming that if it is not carefully handled, later on there will be conflict between scientists, those people citing science, and those people citing theology, or the theologians, those believing in the existence of God. And that is what happened later on. So this person was trying to present the explanation of the theories of science in light of their religious text, right? I'm now wondering if we are also trying to do that.
Do you think that Buddhism is one of the theology?
No.
So what is the definition for theology? Because theology has a God who created the world.
Yeah, but in Buddhism there is no God.
Yeah, but in Buddhism we also have some God.
But they are not creator God.
Yes.
They're just different kind of beings.
But if, for example, if there is a theory that the God only represented the reason or the power of the nature that's not personified like the God created the world, so whether that theory will be regarded as theology or not.
So I think yes, but probably there could be different types of theologies then, different forms of theologies. One is if you blindly believe in the existence of God. The other is if you believe in it by using all these reasons, right? For example, there is this idea also that, for example, God is present in everything, so you are part of it. So you do not have to really think of God in terms of a creator. It can be regarded as a kind of force that is present in everything, and that is the creator. So in that sense, I'm not sure if you just take this word God, probably you are a theologian. But then if you talk about this as a force, as a kind of natural force, or what do you say, conditions or whatever, even in Buddhism we have this idea, right? When the conditions are present, these causes and conditions, it can be anything, and that can be regarded as creator, right? But personifying it or singling out as a specific force, and that is the ultimate thing. I think that is the characteristic of theology. Any questions so far? We are going to discuss something about modern science. Anyone from online has any question? What is Upama's question? What about Chayanon? Invisible Chayanon? No answer. Jan has any question? You mean scientist? That is the idea, but I'm not 100% sure. There may be some scientists who believe in religion, who are very much religious, right?
There are,
Yeah.
especially in China.
So
How to say, the leader of our the scientific institution, the very powerful in China, and the leader of the Buddhist.
yeah, so we cannot generally say that all the scientists are against religion. There are some scientists who do not like religion probably, but there are some scientists who believe in different religious system also. For example, Chan, if you say that, what is his name? I forgot. Anyway, if a scientist is trying to understand the fundamental nature of matter, physics, or he can be in the medical science or in any field, but he can also be a good Buddhist, that I'm a doctor, but or I'm doing research in the lab to produce medicine and so on, but I also believe that by doing this I'm creating some good karma, you see, and time to time he may be going to do meditations to improve himself, to keep himself calm and in good condition mentally, physically. But you can say that probably most of the scientists, when they carry out their researches and when they are trained in science, probably, I think, I'm not sure, that most of them probably would not like the idea of creator God. I'm not sure, because especially when there is a belief that everything is created by the God, and then everything will be taken care of by the God. I think that idea, that belief is not accepted by all these scientists, I think. Because otherwise, what is the point of all this experimentation? If it is all being taken care of by the God, you do not need to do anything, right? Yeah. Mm. Okay, then let us continue. Rise of modern science. Now, yeah, this is an important figure here. Who knows who this person is? No, this is not Einstein. This is a very famous person, especially famous for his painting, but he is also an expert in so many different fields. John? Not Darwin. Darwin is different person. Have you heard this name, Leonardo da Vinci? Yeah,
Of course.
yeah. He's very famous. So, um, we are now talking about the rise of modern science. It is said that it all began with him, basically. So he was an expert in so many different fields, not just painting. Even for painting, you need to have a certain understanding of mathematical calculations. You see, otherwise, when you are painting somebody's face, one eye would be big, another eye would be small.
Do you think this is a real beauty of Da Vinci?
Probably, I'm not sure.
Because I have seen,
Different type of picture. I see.
especially in cartoon.
I see.
Looks very fun.
Okay, let's read it together. The authority of phenomena. The pace of technological innovation began to quicken, particularly in Italy. The political demands of the time gave new importance to technology. Yeah, so there is a political change, and accordingly, there is a change in technology. And a new profession emerged, that of civil and military engineers. So, I mean, the countries needed civil engineer and military engineer. These people faced practical problems that demanded practical solutions. Leonardo da Vinci is certainly the most famous of them, though he was much more as well, a painter of genius. He closely studied human anatomy in order to give verisimilitude to his paintings. So liveliness, okay? He observed human anatomy. He studied human anatomy so closely so that when he paints, when he makes a painting of somebody, it should look lively. As a sculptor, he mastered the difficult techniques of casting metal. As a producer director of the form of Renaissance dramatic production called the masque, he devised complicated machinery to create special effects. But it was as a military engineer that he observed the path of a mortar bomb being lobbed over a city wall and insisted that the projectile did not follow two straight lines, a slanted ascent followed by a vertical drop, as Aristotle had said it must. Leonardo and his colleagues needed to know nature truly. No amount of book learning could substitute for actual experience, nor could books impose their authority upon phenomena. So, the authority of phenomena, understanding the nature, understanding the human anatomy, for example, to make a good painting, understanding a different aspect of life fully. So this is also in a way representative of, how do you say, um, making conscious observation of things within you and outside of you. So because of the political change, when countries needed civil and military engineer, Leonardo da Vinci was one of such person who was, skilled in so many different fields. As it says here, he was a painter of genius, and also he was a sculptor, and he was a producer director, right, of some drama. And then especially here is a discussion of how, as a military engineer, when he was probably taking care of a certain type of bomb or something, they have to have a certain skill that he mastered. And what it says here is that he followed the idea of Aristotle, as Aristotle had said it must.
So Aristotle is wrong.
Sorry?
Aristotle is wrong in this idea.
Aristotle is earlier,
It's earlier.
much earlier than Leonardo da Vinci. And especially the last statement says that their group, Leonardo and his colleagues, they focused on observing the nature, or how do you say, experiencing the nature closely, rather than going by the ideas or theories and so on. The first really serious blow to the traditional acceptance of ancient authorities was the discovery of the New World at the end of the 15th century. Ptolemy, the great astronomer and the geographer, had insisted that only the three continents of Europe, America, and Asia could exist, and Christian scholars from Saint Augustine on had accepted it. The dramatic expansion of the known world also served to stimulate the study of mathematics. So the study of mathematics expanded. Yeah, and Ptolemy is given the importance as a great astronomer and geographer who came up with the idea that these three continents, could exist, and the Christian scholars, namely this person, from Saint Augustine. I'm not sure about this statement. I think there's a discussion of Christian faith to be spread into different parts of the world, including Europe, Africa, and Asia. There was a different form of literature composed by famous sages of the time that stated God had made humankind fully in his image, a creator, not just a rational animal. humans could imitate God by creating. To do so, they must learn nature's secrets, and this could be done only by forcing nature to yield them through the tortures of fire, distillation, and other alchemical manipulations. The reward for success would be eternal life and youth, as well as freedom from want and disease. It was a heady vision, and it gave rise to the notion that through science and technology, humankind could bend nature to its wishes. This is essentially the modern view of science, and it should be emphasized that it occurs only in Western civilization. I think this is very, very clear here. A few things. One is how scientific effort is interpreted, understood in the light of religious point of view, right? Religion. God created humankind, so humankind has the potentiality to create something, but he has to make use of the nature. That means he has to learn the nature's secret, and then, as you can see in the scientific experimentation, and as we have been discussing earlier, when talking about a rainbow, what it says is that you need to create a necessary condition. So you can manipulate different forces to create different things, right? So that is how you have to carry out this scientific test. It is very cold. You don't feel cold? Yeah, I also feel cold, but I was waiting because I think probably you do not. I saw that who? Barbara also wants cold, so she always need AC. And I was thinking probably Grace also need. Really? Oh, really? No, you can say it. Sometimes you can, how do you say? Uh, raise the temperature or reduce it. Normally, 25 is, I think, okay. 16 is too low. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. For me, it's actually okay. And in this classroom, especially, the air is directly hitting us, right? If we are on the other side, then it doesn't matter if it runs also. Yeah, so that is the idea that people have to master the nature so that they are able to create something new. So this is essentially the modern view of science, and it should be emphasized that it occurs only in Western civilization. I think it is not true. I mean, in the scientific experimentation, if you have this idea that by manipulating different forces of nature, you create things, right? Of course, the purpose of scientific testing and discovery is for the benefit of humanity, right? That is true. But if you are saying that, the reward for success would be eternal life and youth, if as well as freedom from want and disease, I don't think this is a correct vision, because you may have this idea that with all this scientific testing and discoveries and everything, our purpose is to extend the life and youthness. That is what is going on now. People are, you see, people want to remain young forever. People want to live forever, so they want to do whatever they can do, right? If it means to take some drugs, if it means to change their body shapes or whatever, right? Plastic surgery, replacing organs, right? Or even trying to keep people's brain, in a certain condition, so that even when somebody is dead, later on he could be put into some other people's body to make him alive again. So all these kind of efforts. Yeah, so yeah, but how many years people can live at the most?
120.
Achan, do you know of any person in Thailand or elsewhere living more than 100 years, or 100 years, 110, 20 years? Not just monk, any person. It could be monk or lady, no problem. You know of any person? Do you know anybody living? I see. Still alive or dead? Still living? Passed away. Yeah. Anyway, I mean, how long? 100 years, 10, 20, 50. With all this means, what is the use? In the time of the Buddha, Ananda lived 120 years, right, Acha? Visakha also lived 120 years. There was one monk who lived, I think, 150 years, Yasa or somebody. But then there is another monk, Bakula Thera, he lived 160 years. That is the highest that is recorded. So there is a passage, once I was reading, it is from a commentary actually. There is a discussion of big and small, I think. Yeah, what is big, what is small? I think that is the topic. So it is said that small here refers to small lifespan, big refers to big lifespan. The discussion says that in the time of the Buddha, these people lived 120 years, somebody lived 150 years, Bakula lived 160 years. So that is the highest, but he also had to die. He also had to die. So then the discussion says that there are some people who die at the age of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, right? So even 160 years, after that you die. So therefore it says that as long as you live, try to do something meaningful. So that is the purpose of the discussion. So these are, now this is in the time of the Buddha, 2500 years ago. But Achan, I'll tell you that if somebody is really practicing Buddha's teaching, or trying to attain nirvana and so on, very quickly I think they would have the idea that what is the use of living in this samsara? Why not? you know why somebody want to live? For example, you have to have a kind of a desire, right? Desire to live, and you have to have a certain purpose. Why do you want to live?
Everybody, I think in Thailand, some one point for the Buddhist that the living is for benefit to other beings.
Yeah,
This is good. This is for me. This is only one reasonable point to be for a long time.
true. That is true. If you want to benefit, that is like all these great bodhisattvas take a vow
Yeah.
of coming back to life again and again, right?
Oh, again, in some sense.
To save the people. But they are enlightened beings. Okay, there are a few more slides. I think maybe probably in the next class I'll quickly go through them and then move to next topic of discussion. It's enough for now. We can have other discussions if you have some questions. And Upama has to read that document carefully and write your essay. Okay. Yeah, because you have to focus on some of these important persons, their lives, their contributions. I remember that somebody was talking about living, having eternal life, becoming eternal. So it is with regard to Alexander the Great. So it is said that because he died quite young, right? And he was a fearful king, right? Alexander from Greece, right? Rome, I'm not sure. He came up to Indian subcontinent, and then he got sick. I think he was injured in the war, and then he got sick. But he was very young and very furious. He wanted to conquer the entire world. He considered himself to be God also. So he wanted to live forever. He wanted to become the supreme ruler of the world. So in India, it is said that, of course, these are some stories, not sure how much is real. So it is said that he met some people in India, and he came to know that there are some sages, ascetics, who have been living for a long period of time, and they know the methods, the tricks for living longer period of time. So, and he came to know particularly about one ascetic, and he said that I cannot go. He sent some of his soldiers to bring that person to him. So these soldiers went to this ascetic, and they said that you need to come with us because our Lord want to meet you. But he said that I think he was just sitting there. He was just an ascetic, and he said that I don't care, I don't want to go. You see, go and tell him that I don't want to go. Then they are saying that he's the Lord, is Alexander the Great, and so on. And if you do not go, we will kill you right now. So he says it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you want to kill me or not kill me, I don't care. Because it seems that he was a sage, he was an ascetic who was probably a realized person, you see. So he doesn't care about life or death, he went beyond that. So, and these soldiers, they were surprised to hear that this person is not afraid of death. So normally if you say somebody that I'm going to kill you, then that person would be afraid. But this person is not afraid. So it's interesting. And then he said that, okay, I will not go, but if your Lord really wants to live longer, ask him to follow this particular road and go to this place in the jungle. There is a lake. Ask him to, there is a cave. Inside the cave, there is a small pond or something, and ask him to go and take some water from there, and he will live longer. So they went back, informed the king, and the king said that, okay. So he was going there, and he said that, nobody follows me. I just go alone because I want to be, I want to live eternally, not you. So he went, and after going to that place, he went inside the cave. He saw the pond, and then he was thinking whether to take or not to take. And then it says that he heard some voice of some bird flying, crow or something. And they also can speak human language, maybe. So saying that, don't drink. Then the king said, why? Then he said, I drank and I cannot die. So I feel lonely. And not sure after that he drank or not. So this person who is talking about this is making a point that, okay, for example, you are able to live, eternally. You have eternity of life. What are you going to do with that when there is nobody on the planet? When the planet is going to be destroyed after thousands of years, many thousands of years, nobody is around. How would you feel? What would you do? Wouldn't you feel boring? Right?
Yes.
So the
People aren't understand his grandson.
so this person is saying that, what is the point of this? What is the, is not actually talking about this point of living long. He said that, what is the point of thinking about it? What is the point of thinking about it? Just you. That is the focus in Buddhism also. You are here right now. Do what is important for you right now. Okay. So these are really nice stories, even though they are probably stories, but they have got some insight. Most of the time people are puzzled by this, So that is why all these things, sickness, death, appear to be painful, but they are part of life. So what happens, as you can see in most of the descriptions, that these enlightened beings, they say that these are part of life as long as you live. So what changes when you go through this practice is the attitude towards life. Now, what happens is that I'm young, I do not want to become older. So there is a kind of resistance. I'm well, healthy, I do not want to become sick. There is a kind of attachment towards wellness and repulsiveness towards sickness and so on. It is because of this attitude that we suffer. I want this, I do not want that. But when you go beyond this wanting and not wanting, everything becomes part of life. There is just living. There is just, experience. You do not differentiate between good and bad experience also.
The one thing is that human beings have this fear of fear.
All beings have. All beings, not just human beings. But that is the interesting thing. Fear of death and the actual death could be different. could be different, right? Fear is something that we create. It is in our psychology. It doesn't mean that, the way we imagine about the pain and so on, it would be like that. Yeah. There many people talk about it. There is especially one talk I heard from Ajahn Brahm. I sent you so many things of Ajahn Brahm's talk earlier. Ajahn Brahm. I like his talks. So he lives in Australia now. He was in Thailand a long time back, but he's in Australia. He built a temple there and he lives in Australia. Ajahn Brahmavamsa. Now I think he cannot come to Thailand. Ajahn Brahmavamsa. Originally from England, he came to Thailand as a young boy, became a monk, practiced meditation. Ajahn Chah, a student of Ajahn Chah, Wat Pananacha. Yeah, so for 8 or 10 years. After that, he went to Australia. He built a monastery. He has been living there since then, but he travels around the world now because of pandemic. I think cannot go anywhere. So when he is talking about that, and he's saying that it is the fear and pain is all in your imagination. Yeah, the way he says is actually, if you listen to the explanation carefully, you see that he just say that it is like this moment and next moment. That is how he is saying it. I mean, of course, it is not easy to understand and accept it. But the question is, why he is saying like that? Is it just to keep us calm, or it is something that he understood and realized, therefore he is conveying it, so that you do not worry, just do your work. Okay? Anyway, these are the things that we will always have. That is why you have this focus all the time. Every sutta, every text, every Buddhist tradition, you would have this basic teaching. Sometimes actually I do not want to discuss these things or even think these things too much also, because then you have a kind of, if you are not really strong enough to deal with these things, this reality of life, you feel sad. So sorrow has overcome you. So therefore we need to discuss the beautiful teachings as well, beautiful things, you see. Otherwise, in the text, you would find that all the time the Buddha would remind everybody that birth is suffering, sickness is suffering, death is suffering, becoming old is suffering, right? So these are the part of life, and what you have to do now. And there is a reason for it. And now in the modern world, I think it is much more important. Why is that? Because we tend to forget. We tend to forget that we are going to become old. We tend to forget that we are going to become sick. You see, then what we do? We become so proud of our own being. I have this, you do not have that. I have this power, you do not have. You see, I can do this, I can do that. I have this many things. So because of this, the Buddha says that do not have this idea, because once you have that, you are really going far away from the truth. Do not do that. So this becomes a constant reminder for people. That is why in every sutta, every talk, you would see that Buddha is constantly reminding people. That is the purpose. Otherwise, he doesn't say that you do not live your life. In fact, when they say this, then life becomes, I think, more vibrant, that every moment I should live. I should cherish, I should try to help people, and I should live peacefully and happily. No need to become so sad. Why need to become so sad? Enjoy the life. Anyway, now based on the document that I sent to you, probably you have to write your second summary by next week, right?
Every summer we have 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'll give you 2 weeks. For this one, as I said, no need to go through the entire document because it is going to be just 1-page summary. You can focus on a certain aspect. For example, it has got pre-critical science, modern science, or you just focus on a particular section and then you write a summary of what you have understood. But as I said, Upama has to go through the entire document, not now, later, because you have to make your presentation and also you have to write your essay on this. Yeah. Next week, most probably, I'll be focusing on the epistemological reflections from both scientific and Buddhist perspective. So my focus would be mostly on Buddhist perspective, but I try to present something from scientific perspective as well. Yeah, but it would not be so much. Okay, then I think we can end our class here. Right? Thank you. Bye-bye.